Welcome to episode number 292 of Daily Cyber. This is going to be a great episode. Myself and this guest have already been talking about some things about cybersecurity, what's going on in the industry, things that some fun stories that we have that we're going to be sharing through the stream, or just what's going on in the cybersecurity world, especially in the current state that we're in with AI and technology and small to mid-sized organizations, and what do they really have to work on, really have to think about, and really overcoming the mystical that, hey, it's happening over there, it's not happening here, right? We're going to really kind of dive deep in and really talk about cybersecurity strategies and things that each size of organizations, from solo entrepreneurs to larger organizations, really need to think about and apply. So today I got Robert. He's a seasoned business leader and a visionary. He's leading experts and authority on making organizations more profitable through the strategic application of technology, especially when we were talking about cybersecurity and security, best practices. Drawing on wealth of research and over 30 years of experience, Robert has developed a unique perspective that aligns organizational objectives with appropriate technology solutions. As the CEO and founder of TGT Solutions Incorporated, he works with businesses to increase their overall efficiency and drive initiatives through the application of technology and security. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, so how's your week going so far?
Brilliantly well.
Well, that's good to hear. At least you're not dealing with any fires like the rest of us cybersecurity people, incidents, things along that line. So good to hear your week is going really well.
We are dealing with incidents. We're just dealing with them effectively.
There we go. That's a good way to reshape that, right? And make sure that it's more in a positive spin. So got a question for you. So I know one of the things that you're looking at with cybersecurity, and something that we've talked about, working with small business, what do you do to prevent, cybersecurity? And what's your strategy and planning?
One of the things we do is to use the metaphor, get paid to be cyber secure.
Okay.
PAID is an acronym referring to preparation, assessment, implementation, and reaping the dividend. And we find that smaller business owners relate heavily to the concept of, I'm doing this so that I can get paid, so that I can reap a dividend having done it. And the payment and the dividend in our minds is the fact that you get to keep what you earn in your legitimate business, as opposed to crying over the fact that you built an empire which you've now lost.
So let's go through that. Go walk me through each of the phases of the steps, because preparation is different for each organization.
Yes.
Right? As you know, preparation can be just making a phone call and saying, hey, I'm prepared. But
right.
The other ones are, like we talked about before, is they put in the controls in place and manage them. So walk me through that acronym.
The first part of preparation is causing business owners to recognize that cybersecurity is a business problem, not a technology problem. And as simple as that may sound, it means asking them to allocate time, allocate team, allocate money, and thinking through what that means. So this is why the dividend metaphor works so well for us. Every business person understands, you want a dividend? Well, you have to have made a capital investment. Aha. Well, if you're going to make a capital investment, let's talk about the nature of that investment and the type of return you want from it. And we walk them through that so they get very comfortable with the fact that, no, cyber is not one piece of software put in by one guy in the corner and tick the box and it's done. No. Cyber is an entire universe on its own. And you, my dear business owner, need to spend a bit of time preparing for the successful survival in that universe.
Okay.
So that's where the preparation starts.
And then for that, what are 5 things I would need to do? Like, if I'm listening to this right now, I'm a new business, what would be 5 things you would say, okay, if you were going to prepare,
Mhm.
here's 5 things I would do as your checklist to start looking at preparation?
The first thing I would want from them is a commitment each month to be part of a cybersecurity committee so that they show up, they ask questions, they're engaged, they pay attention, they learn.
Mhm.
As simple as that sounds, it's very difficult for a business owner to commit the time each month to doing this. And we insist on that as a starting point because this is, as I keep saying, it's not a once and done. You got to show up. And you don't have to do the heavy lifting, but you got to show up and be aware and understand what's going on. We talk to them about, second of all, we talk to them about cyber insurance.
Mhm.
Many people argue, well, why do I need that? Well, I'm going to be very candid with you. Unless you have it, you, like many organizations, will die. And just the process of preparing for it, look, getting it is essential, but the process of preparing for it is even more essential.
Right.
Something that we argue very fervently.
Right. Okay. So we got
Third of all,
joining community, insurance.
yeah.
Keep going.
Third of all, we argue that they need to delegate the responsibility. Somebody has got to wake up every morning thinking about, is this place secure? How are we going to make it more secure? Whether you want a virtual CIO because you're large enough to afford it, or you're small, like perhaps it's just a 2-person organization, and you need to say, between the two of us, which one of us is going to own this responsibility? Because if you're going to own it, there are things that you are expected to do on a recurring basis.
Okay.
Again, we suggest there's a need for a budget. And the budget can vary based on the size of the organization. But there has got to be some allocation of time and some allocation of money to that person who just said, yes, I'll own it.
Okay.
And the other part of preparation in our minds that's very key is recognizing we have to do some sort of current state review of the way things are at the moment. You got to understand how good, but more often than not, how bad things really are.
Okay. And that review, are you talking about internal self review, outside, parties to do like a security gap assessment?
We prefer, as an external agency, we suggest it's better to have an external entity do it because, for one, we'll tell you the truth. Whereas most times that we've seen people do an internal assessment, they sort of gloss over the things that they actually need to be focused on. So a small external review is a wonderful place to start.
Now, when external reviews, do you tell them to go based on a framework, i.e., like I'm going to go kind of a gradual scale here.
Mm-hmm.
So like CIS, Center for Information Security, is generally a good one to use for small businesses, medium size, right? To then move up to like NIST, then ISO, then kind of SOC 2, Type 2, CMMC, like all the rest of them. I think, those frameworks in my mind would be the gradual step of where you would start off. If you've never done this before, you don't know your security posture, Center for Information Security, the CIS controls, to map that where your security posture is to that. I think it's a good start point, and I love to hear what you think.
I agree with you that there can be a gradual progression through the various models. We tend to go even below CIS and start with some very basic, rudimentary things just to help again, it's all about preparation and helping the business owner to get comfortable. So we try to stay away from the formal models, try to go with some things that they can relate to. And most important of all, we try and show what's already happened in their industry. We're not saying to you something about some strange industry in some far off land. You, my friend, are a baker. Here's what's gone on with bakers recently. You're a construction company. Here's what's gone on in your construction industry. So part of that preparation for us is giving them some live examples of how others in their industry have fared with respect to cyber, and it's usually not very good.
Okay.
So that helps to get them in the mode of, aha, I should pay attention because if it can happen to somebody my size or somebody in my industry, it's more relevant to me.
And that totally makes sense. And I get that industry standard, right? Because again, look, you have different verticals. And again, they have different operations, right? Different technology and solutions, business operations, all make sense that, If you have a manufacturer, you have a retail, you have whatever, your business model is going to be a little bit different from each of the other organization.
Mhm.
Totally get that.
What
I
one of the things we note is many businesses, whether they say it to you or not, they're looking for certain markers, for want of a better expression. Is this in the construct? I'm in the construction industry. Is this in the construction industry? I'm in Quebec. Is this happening in Quebec? So there are a lot of unconscious markers that business owners use to assess the threat in their minds.
right.
And it's very important to hit those markers to cause them to say, okay, I'm listening. You've got my attention.
No, totally agree. And I think from my point is I know sometimes I've had organizations, small business to medium size, and having that framework customized, like we'd use the CIS a lot of times,
Mhm.
but have it customized then because there's things that might not be applicable. I'll use the example, software development lifecycle.
Absolutely.
They're a baker, they're not
Yeah.
developing
They're not.
software,
Precisely.
right? And there's things you kind of say, okay, not applicable, not applicable. But hey, you have and you have accounts payable, accounts receivable, system on the side there. Do you have two-factor authentication? Is that data encrypted? Is that encrypted at rest, in motion? Like some of those key things you can go through to say, okay, at least you matured up to here. Now, like you and I talked about, maybe that is phase one, and then phase two is that next level of maturity, then the next
Agreed.
level,
Agreed. Agreed entirely.
right? Now, you said there's preparation. The A was, sorry,
Assessment.
assessment. So
So
that's what we
remember,
just talked about.
we hang on.
Yep.
We've talked about the assessment, but for us, the assessment's much more than just doing the assessment. The assessment actually means we sit down with them after the fact, and we go through pretty much a traffic light scenario:
Okay.
red, yellow, green, and we focus very heavily on the red areas.
Okay.
And regrettably, most companies have got a lot of red areas. We attach a numeric score to it, and we begin the process of evaluating that assessment with them.
Mhm.
That is such an important thing for businesses to just to really understand where they are and
Mhm.
what makes them red and vulnerable.
Right.
We then assess what it takes to begin to move maybe from a red to an amber in that particular category. And the one we and this the where we always go next is employees. You've got people in here. Let's start by training those people. Let's assess what those people know and let's get them onto some kind of cyber training tool because most of them don't recognize danger, and social engineering is still the predominant way to break into somebody's defenses.
Okay.
Mhm.
So red light scenario, remediation, maturity, training.
Yeah.
Anything else under assessment?
Yes. Under assessment, we then go through all of the software controls they've got,
Okay.
all of the hardware controls they've got, the logical controls they've got. And it's at that point that they begin to realize just how perhaps not well protected they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, totally true. When you do that inventory, it brings up a lot.
It brings up a lot. And it's very important to walk it through because there are a lot of times where people will say something like, well, I've got an antivirus software. And we politely bring to their attention that, well, that's very nice that you've got one. When was the last time you patched it?
All right.
Ooh, is it on every device? Ooh, maybe not.
Right.
Okay, and and it's that assessment, and we spend the time with people to help them to understand you're not perhaps where you think you are, and it's you have to break that to people very gently. You just can't smash their perception of security. You have to help them to realize how porous their borders really are.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Red light, progression, training, software, hardware, kind of evaluation.
Mhm.
Anything else under assessment?
Those are the big ones.
Okay. And then we've got I.
We help them to implement the
Okay.
changes on a prioritized basis. And the one we always prioritize first is employee training.
Okay.
And we help them to realize, yes, it's nice that we're training your employees. We need to train you as well. You'd be surprised how many owners don't perceive themselves as needing training, and we're pointing out, well, you are the head honcho, or you have a C-level title. You are the one that's probably going to get that email that's not the one you should open.
Now, any reason why you start with them versus the controls?
We start with them because the more that they learn about how much they do not know, the more receptive they become to allowing other changes in the organization.
Interesting.
In
Okay.
our observation.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting perspective. I know with insurance and all that, they're looking at like endpoint protections, kind of one of the first ones, two-factor authentication, because what I've seen is over the last probably 3-4 years, it's not the training, because when an incident happens, as you're talking about business email commerce, they click on it, the person knows it's just they were busy, they were doing 3 things at once, and it wasn't the point where they were focused on the action. It was, I was on a call checking the email while someone was running in my office and asking me a question, and then I clicked on that link. It's like you do a post-mortem and go, so did you know that link was, yeah, when I look at it now, of course I know, because I did the training and I get that. So I think there's a balance between the two right now.
Agreed.
The training and the controls, because I think we're getting now smarter employees, but they're overwhelmed.
Right. I agree with you entirely, but let me share a thought with you. Many employees don't have much in the way of authority, for example, to change a vendor's bank account or access to the company's bank account.
Mhm.
We have found there are a lot of leaders who do have such access. And the number of people who still use simple passwords or who still use the passwords that they use on several other applications is alarmingly high. So we like to go to work on the leaders early, because they, from our experience, have been the highest source of vulnerability.
Oh, for sure. I remember I did an identity, a dark web scan. We had a service that we sold
Mhm.
to a company that they did a dark web scan to kind of look at who's been compromised, whatever. And I remember the executive in the room saying, no, don't worry about us. I'm worried about my employees. Us in this room, we're fine. We're good. We wouldn't get compromised. And I remember on this, when we gave him the report, I said, I don't think you guys are going to be happy with this.
Right.
And he was like, no, Brandon, you understand. Like, we're good. I'm like, I wouldn't say that too quickly until you review the report. Every executive was on the report at least 2 to 3 times in different sites,
Right.
being compromised. Oh my God, how this happened? What do you mean my LinkedIn account was compromised? What do you mean my Bright things? What do you mean this was that? And I'm like, these are compromises that happen, through the industry. It wasn't just we're picking on you, but your information is out there.
Yeah.
Now, did you reset your password? Did you do that? Well, I didn't think I had to. Why would I have to do that, right? And so,
can I just piggyback on that story?
Sure.
We use a similar tactic. We go look for some information on the dark web, and in one of the meetings we had, I said to one of the executives with whom I was meeting, "Do you recognize this password?" And I read the password out. The room went silent because everybody understood who I was talking about and what I was talking about. And I said, if we can become aware of it, guess what happens when the bad guys become aware of it?
Right.
You haven't changed your password in years.
Right.
What did you think was going to happen?
Well, and to your point, is that password over multiple platforms in the same variation and or the same password? Because you and I know, and we've dealt with this over for the years, is that their company email or a company email address and their password is the same one as their bank, is the same one as Amazon, is the same one as, and you just kind of go through the list.
I shudder to tell you how many times we've seen that.
Well, the one I've
often.
I've seen too is, and I recommend people that have multiple passwords, look at a password manager. A lot of those will do your self-evaluation for you when you start plugging things in, going, you have the same username and account for all of these websites.
Right.
You need to reset them. And they kind of go, hold on, I have 50 accounts. Like, how am I supposed to do that?
Right.
You need to go back and reset them all.
But Brandon, just to piggyback on your point, most people who run smaller businesses aren't familiar with password type software
Right.
and don't use it and resist it at first. And we bring to their attention that's why you need it. Something to help you to evaluate whether you've used it before, whether it's too simple, and your whole team needs it because they're going through the same process you're going through. How do I make this easy? And that's not the question you should be asking yourself, how to make it easy. It's how should you make it such that it can't be cracked?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So we got employees first, look at implementation. What other areas of implementation do you guys look at or focus on?
We look at their logical controls.
Okay.
There are so many organizations that have not thought through logical controls from a security perspective. People think of controls from an ease of use perspective for the end customer, but not from a security perspective. We were speaking about one earlier where you get a vendor who says, I've changed my banking information. And very few organizations say, thank you, hang the phone up and call the vendor they know to see, did you just call me about this? Or did you just send me an I cannot tell you, probably 99% of the time, they don't have that security control in place.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is hard. I mean, you and I have talked about this where we've had multiple engagements where that's happened.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, and this is the thing where you got third party liability and downstream liability, what we're seeing more is the smaller vendors are getting compromised and the threat actor is going upstream to all the partners because now it's a valid email address. It's a valid phone number. So Robert's calling me from TGT saying, hey, Brandon, I need to reset my password. I need to do that. And I'm like, okay, Robert, it's you. You're calling. And then all of a sudden I do that. And Robert's now into my systems. He's doing whatever he wants. And we're seeing that more and more. And I think, like you said, having separation of duties, clear validation, especially on privilege access, any type of, elevated, process and or permissions needs to be validated by at least two people.
Yeah. So that implementation, we believe, happens on an ongoing basis. So this month you might implement a tactic which hardens your security a bit. You might do multi-factor authentication this month just to keep it simple. Next month, we should have another implementation going on, something else that we can do to harden your security. And we believe that's a repetitive process until we achieve, as you just said, and you go back now to a higher level of evaluation, like in this standard. Okay, now we're getting the right scores on this one. Okay, now we can say we've achieved something. So that's the approach we take.
Perfect. And now, and then you had
dividend.
Dividend, okay.
We believe in consistently helping organizations to understand the value of these tactics. Remember, we go in with a dividend model, as we call it. What's the dividend? Why are we doing this? So we try to help organizations to see the value of what they're doing. If you're a services business and you're bidding on contracts, we then say, you got to lead with the fact that we are cyber secure. Here are the 10 things we have done to be more secure, because that gives you a competitive advantage. If people are placing their information with you, we advise that you then lead with comments about what you're doing to secure people's data, because we believe that once people understand the benefit of them taking the action, they're buying in much more heavily to helping to make these changes happen, as opposed to, well, the boss said we have to do it, so I guess we got to do it.
Well, to your point, a lot of organizations are learning now as they start to go upstream to bigger companies. If they meet this requirement, this due diligence, that relationship now becomes better and stronger quicker because you passed the due diligence. Now it's contracts and now it's negotiation because you passed.
Yes.
So, like you said, it becomes a profit center versus a cost center.
Absolutely, and we focus very heavily on that. Hence our mission statement: helping organizations to profit through technology, because we're inviting them to invest on a recurring basis in their own security. So sometimes the first, for example, 5,000 the owner is prepared to spend, but then you get into 10 or 12,000 or whatever that number may be, and they start, well, we've done so much already, and you're pointing out to them, but look at the dividend you're planning to reap. If you want a big dividend from a stock that you buy, clearly you invested more.
Right.
So the dividend part of this is not a just once and done and we're off of it. We are consistently bringing to the attention of the owner and the leaders why we're doing this, what's the value in it, because we have to keep their heads in the proverbial game.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think what happens too, and this is my perspective on this, when they get that one deal and they get that next deal, and then they're like, "Oh my, this is working."
Yeah.
Now we start to see,
Yes.
okay, and then it's now something that I think you and I have to do is now educate them. They have to invest back into it because they have to maintain that.
Yes.
You're profitable. You're making some great deals. You're growing your business.
Yeah.
We still have to start to invest in this just a little bit,
Mhm.
not just let it go because we're good. It's
Yeah.
set it and forget it.
Yeah. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time with businesses is to understand the language of success for them. Does it mean more contracts? Does it mean the renewal of the contract? Does it mean a higher dollar value on the next contract you win? What does the dividend for them really mean? And we try to express cyber in those terms and the protection of that investment to create that eventual dividend. So we found that a very helpful approach.
Nice.
Hmm.
Perfect. So we got dividends. Any other steps there? I mean, this paid approach is really in depth, which is good. I mean, a lot of organizations need that structure to kind of see where they're going through the phases.
Mhm. We go back to that assessment phase constantly because we're always helping leaders. So even though it's a sequential process, prepare, assess, implement, and you'll get the dividend, it's an iterative process. And we often go back to that assessment stage because we help people to realize what else is going on in their industry, because people are progressively realizing their industry is under attack.
Yep.
Even car dealers, you're like, well, I just sell cars. Well, do you know how many car dealers have been hacked? Well, I'm in construction. Well, do you realize 80% of construction companies have been hit? Like when people begin to realize how their industry has been affected, it helps them to continuously make that investment. And that's key, Brendan. We talked about this earlier. You don't get to be cybersecure in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. It's a long journey.
Right.
So we have to keep them in the game. So even though it's a sequential process to go from preparation to assessment to implementation to dividend, it's also a repetitive and iterative process insofar as there's still further preparation to be done. I'll give you a simple example. We said to a company recently that we've been helping to harden their security, it's now time to do vendor assessments. And the look I got was, you gotta be, well, I shouldn't say it online, but you gotta be kidding me. And I'm
Right.
like, no, you have many vendors. If you do all of this and one of your vendors to whom you've granted access to your system isn't doing it as well, you left the window open, mate.
Right.
And it was very hard to persuade them to, okay, let's at least get a simple vendor assessment going. We don't have to get too up there just yet. Let's get one going so that your vendors begin to understand that if they want to do business with you, they too must be thinking about cyber.
Mhm.
You know, when that process came back, 60% of the vendors they had no cyber consideration whatsoever.
Oh wow.
None. Because people seem to think, well, I deal with this person and I know him, and they don't ask questions like, okay, I know he's your gardener, but you gave him some of your information, or he might have a key to a particular place that's important to you. Cybersecurity and physical security go very hand in hand.
Mhm.
So um, I said all of that to make the point. It's an iterative cycle. You
Right.
don't get to do it once and forget about it, which is why we spend so much time helping them to prepare, to
Mhm.
understand this is a journey. This is not a once and done.
Well, I think to add to your point is that the more organizations grow,
Hmm.
they're going to see it from their partners.
Hmm.
They're going to see it from their cybersecurity. It's going to be one of the line items. Like, do you do third party evaluations?
Yeah.
Do you do an ongoing due diligence at least annually
Hmm.
of the people, partners, third party vendors, fourth party vendors
Hmm.
that you work with?
Hmm.
And if you're not prepared for that,
Hmm.
it's a shock because now you have to go to them and say, okay, how do I create this questionnaire? How do I ask them a question? How do I validate like this information? Because yeah, I remember, and I'm sure you've experienced this. People filling out cybersecurity questionnaires. Check, 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 submit. It's
Hmm.
now done.
Hmm.
Now it's like, no, we want to see it.
Hmm.
Now we want your policies. Now we're
Hmm.
going to do an external vulnerability scan and check to make sure we can validate all that. And
Hmm.
now we'll start talking about your policy.
Hmm. Hmm. To add to what you just said, we take it slowly at
Mhm.
first. We ask them to send a note to their third parties to say, we will be conducting this. Are you okay with it?
Right.
And a real simple test. And many people write back to say, no, we're not okay with it. To which we say to our clients, what does that tell you?
Right.
Yeah, straight up, what does that tell you?
Right.
And you have to give them some notice. You know what? Appreciate that you're not ready now, but we'll be coming back in 3 months' time, and you will be ready if you hope to continue doing business with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're going to either do that and or they're not going to have cybersecurity insurance
Yeah.
and their policy might not follow through. So now they don't have insurance for their company and now they're losing their partner. So I think it's just the age that we're in right now. Security is such an essential part of being in business.
Yes. And we're seeing several clients who are beginning to receive that message that security is a prerequisite for being in business. Now we're at the point of, okay, you have to start making this tangible. You can't just use the words. We've got to be doing things that demonstrate to your upstream, so to speak, the people who buy from you or whose value chain you are now a part of, why and how you're taking this seriously.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure. 100%. So we've talked about kind of this pre stage.
Mhm.
How do I operationalize this? Like, how do I now take that and now do work through my day to day?
Mhm. Great question. So many people have multiple systems. So they may have some kind of customer master, they may have some kind of accounts payable system, they may have some kind of marketing system. And we try to help them to understand we got to go through this on a system by system basis. We may have done it at the process level. Now we got to take it down to the system. And I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. You challenge people to say, when was the last time you upgraded your financial system? When was the last time you patched your basic desktop operating system?
Right.
And operationalizing it is a time consuming process, and you have to be prepared for a few dirty looks from your clients when you're doing that.
Right. Now, is there certain areas that you look at when you're operationalizing?
Yes,
Okay.
we absolutely start with the Microsoft stack because
Okay.
it is probably the most attacked stack in history.
Okay.
So whether it's the operating system or a system that is dependent in some way on it, that's where we want to start looking.
Right.
And we want to make sure that they've got the right patch levels. And we want to, again, this may seem simple, but do you actually have a development server in which we can test all of this together? Many
Right.
people don't. Many people just have one system and it's like, okay, well, how do you roll back if this thing doesn't work properly? And they say, well, that's not your remit as cyber. And we say, yeah, from a cyber perspective, we need a place where we can test all of this and make sure it works. So let's
Right.
start thinking about it.
See, I know for me, one of the things I look at as 30,000 foot view, right? People, process, and technology. Kind of take those three buckets and start driving from there.
Mhm.
Do they have the right people in place? Because that, again, for you and I know, some small companies, their accountant is their HR person, who's their IT guy, and he's wearing multiple hats. He or she is wearing multiple hats, right? And can they support
Mhm.
everything we're bringing in? Because now it's 10% utilization here, 20% utilization there. And they're like, hold on, I don't have the time or bandwidth and or knowledge. Maybe they just don't have the experience.
Mhm.
So I kind of look at these areas of like people, do they have the right process in place? And then, like you said, do they ever have the right technology stack,
Mhm.
endpoint protection, two-factor authentication, password manager in place to
Mhm.
actually implement what we're talking about?
Mhm. So we were talking about operationalizing things. One of the operational things that we're very keen on as well is policies and
Mhm.
documentation. We've had a situation where one of our clients needed to call Microsoft, but the person who had the Microsoft password had left the company.
Okay. Yeah.
So there was no way that Microsoft was going to talk to them.
Right.
And it took a very long time, I'm speaking of months here,
Right.
to help them to go through the process and to have a new password, new credentials issued for them to have access. So the very simplest things in documentation can sometimes take an extraordinarily long period of time. But I mentioned that because we're talking about operationalizing things. So now, okay, you should have a policy. Okay, so you should have passwords. So there's a place to store them. Who's got the passwords? Where are we going to store them? Do those passwords actually work?
Right.
Sometimes that can take weeks and even months to get documented.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the things I'd recommend if someone's watching this, go through a business continuity plan, a disaster recovery,
Mhm.
and then go through a tabletop exercise to test all those to make sure.
Mhm.
And again, don't you don't have to share the passwords on the tabletop, but at
Mhm.
least our password manager, the CEO, the COO, the CFO, they all have the at least accounts, failover accounts. So again, if break glass one is not available, whatever that may be, at least you have, like you said, the
Mhm.
redundancies that someone else can take over. Because I've seen that myself where I've had an incident, response, an incident where the actual main point of contact, the cybersecurity expert in the company's, the client's location, quit in the middle of the engagement.
Yep.
Just left. Said, "I quit. I'm not dealing with this."
Yep.
And he's like, the CEO's like, he's got the keys to the kingdom. He's got everything. I need him back here. And we're like, we're not putting pressure on him. I think he's feeling it because the threat actors, trying to negotiate a certain amount of money. Servers are not getting up in time. The backups are not restoring. And we understand this all happens, but he's not taking the pressure well, and he quit. Took about 24, 48 hours. Finally, he brought him back, and we were like, you need someone to shadow him and get everything he knows, because
Mhm.
I understand it's your business. You trust him, but you need redundancy. You need a failover.
And many times the failover could be an external firm
Mhm.
which does not have full-time responsibility, but on whom you can call when people do exactly what you just described.
And now I'm going to put a caveat here. A full-time MSP
Mhm.
that's been in business that you value, not
Yeah,
I know a friend that's opened up a
well
company,
spoken.
right? Because and it happens, and I'm
It
not
happens.
faulting those people that open up a company, but sometimes they just go under,
Mhm.
and then you're like, well, hold on, my guy left, and I can't get a hold of that guy. He's no longer in business. Now what do I do, right? So
We've spent a lot of time in this conversation speaking about smaller businesses, rightly so, because they're the ones who do tend to be most vulnerable. But I just wanted to share a story with you about operationalizing things.
yeah,
We worked for a very large organization who did take the process seriously. And we went through a tabletop exercise with them. And we got to the point in the tabletop where we said, okay, we're under attack. Execute your plan. And one of the people in the room said, right, we're going to call these people. To which we said, how are you going to call them? To which they said, just a second, let me look them up on the system. To which we said, the system is compromised.
Right.
And the room fell silent because, of course, they're a national organization and they had no way of contacting each other.
Mhm.
It moved to the point where they did everything through these wonderful systems, but nobody could remember or knew the numbers for the other people. To which we said, it's okay to write some things down on paper, like a name
Mhm.
and a phone number that you absolutely need.
Mhm.
So we were talking about operationalizing, and the comment being made here is operationalizing is a very long process. You have to help people to think through, what does this actually mean for you? Who are you going to call? How are you going to call them? Where are you going to get that information in the moment of crisis?
And to add, so people are listening to that, small business, if you're looking at your business continuity plan, you're looking at disaster recovery, you're looking, okay, well, I can't leave it in my office, can't leave my desk, I can't have a stack of papers and someone can see it. Normally, what I recommend, and just here's one strategy, and I'm sure Robert has his strategies too, is having a encrypted, flash drive that you leave in your bank, deposit box or a safe at home,
Mhm.
and you have 3 copies that your CFO has a safe and a backup there, and then maybe there is a physical printed out copy in the safe as well.
Mhm.
Right? And what happens is, if anyone needs to go get it, it might be half an hour drive, being half an hour down to get some contact information and process and things like that is a lot less downtime than you sitting there in a boardroom or a war room virtually going, okay, do you know Joan's number? Do you know Jim's number? I don't know Jim's number. Do you know anyone that does? And you
Mhm.
guys trying to figure it out versus I'll be back in 15 minutes. Let me go to my safe. I'm going to go get it. You
Yeah,
get it. And all of a sudden you're back up and rolling. Someone's on a conference call. You're good to go.
right. To extend your remark now, we talk about operationalizing things. People need to think that through. How do you keep things off site? What does off site mean for you?
Right.
Sometimes it's a safety deposit box at a bank, or as you just said, it could be a safe in somebody's house.
Mhm.
We've recently had that situation where there was a set of security tools, I won't say which ones, were at somebody's house. And the question arose, well, how do we get access to their house if they're on holiday?
Right.
Operationalizing things takes time, takes thought, and takes collaboration between teams.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So that we kind of got a high level operational. One of the questions I was thinking in my mind is, okay, so how do I prioritize? Like, what's the priorities of this? Like, you're talking about operation, like, and like, we can't do 15 things at once. How do I start to look at what's first, what's second, what's third?
Mhm. We always prioritize based on the process or the system that is most fundamental to the business in question.
Okay.
Sometimes you've got a client facing website where people pay online. Well, we need to do a lot of work to really secure your website so it doesn't go down, so it's not subject to denial of service attacks or whatever, and so we can secure the information that clients are putting in. That's an example of a prioritization that we might make. That might be prioritized, for example, over an HR system if there's a small number of employees.
Mhm.
So we do a lot of that type of thinking where the business tells us what's most important, why it's most important, and for how long they can afford for it to be offline, if at all. And then based on that, we go for that. We come down the list and harden those systems first.
And I'm going to align one item to that
Mhm.
because you talked about this, a red light. I would line the critical systems with the red light and have
Mhm.
that priority because
Mhm.
your critical systems, if they have the more of a minimal, and I'm going to use this, say you had top 3 critical systems and they're more of an orange or
Yeah.
yellow type criticality, but there's one system that is important, essential,
Mhm.
but it has a critical.
Mhm.
I would put that in the priority. And the only reason why on a security mindset is that one's probably more vulnerable, especially if it's external facing,
Mhm.
that could get compromised. That now everything's red.
Mhm.
Your whole environment's red.
Mhm.
So looking on that, I think that would be my chain of events
Mhm.
to now start in hard environment. No, I wouldn't leave, and I want to be here context for people. Say I had a marketing tool that I was using, and there was a critical vulnerability, but my ERP system, my accounts payable, my email systems, my payroll were yellow, but my marketing was red.
Mhm.
I would not put that over priority of my critical systems.
Right.
Because if the marketing system goes down, the marketing system goes down. Yeah, we can take a day or two or even a week to get that back up.
Right.
But I can't lose payroll. I can't lose my invoicing. I
Right.
can't lose manufacturing. I can't lose all that.
Mhm.
You're completely down. So that would be my priorities. I don't know.
Right.
What do you think, Robert?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I just want to share. Remember, I said to you, one of the things we're constantly doing is cycling through the paid model. As we go through it iteratively, we come back to the dividend. And as you spoke, it occurred to me this is the point in the conversation where I'd be drawing to the attention of the leader of the business. You realize one of the dividends that's accruing from this entire process is collaboration.
Right.
Your team is now speaking to each other about substantive topics. What matters most? And you'd be surprised how many times it helps people to get out of the pettiness that
Yeah.
can sometimes settle into an organization. Well, this is my area. I'm not talking to this person about it. Well, you know what? You absolutely do need to speak to them about it, not because he owns it or he or she's trying to take it over, but because some collaboration is required if we are to figure out appropriate security controls. So a huge dividend of this is collaboration.
No, totally agree.
Mhm.
With that being said, so we're looking at the priorities on that, but how do we measure success? Like, how do I know I'm successful? Because you're doing all this great, we're doing that, and I'm thinking as an owner, okay, so what? Like, how do I quantify we are now successful?
Mhm. Let's start with your insurance policy.
Hmm.
If you don't have one and you can now get one because you've taken these steps, you have taken a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Let's go a step further. To have gotten that insurance policy, that probably means that we have done enough work to harden 10, maybe 15 different systems. So quantifying that is very useful because hardening those systems then makes you eligible for something you were not eligible for before. Let's use an example, identity access management.
Hmm.
Okay, so now you can go to the market and you can share to the market. We do more to validate your identity than our competitors do. Believe me when I say to you, that matters in a lot of industries.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So there are several ways to quantify the progress being made, and we help our clients to go through that quantification process so that the owners, the board sometimes, feels very confident these are tangible benefits we are deriving from the process.
Now, do you do any data analytics? I'm just going to use this as an example. Say, for example, you find out vulnerabilities,
Mhm.
but then now you put a patch management program, and the vulnerabilities now have gone from 800 in the environment to 80 in the environment ongoing. Because again, Patch Tuesday, we got that, but now they have 80 in the environment ongoing, and you go, hey, look, we had 800, and now we're at 80.
Mhm. We do that, but
Yeah.
more importantly, what we do is to point out the number of consecutive months that someone in the organization has taken charge of doing updates. So,
Okay.
yeah, you've gone from 800 down to 80, but how many months consecutively has this vulnerability list been reviewed and updated? That's what we ask our leaders to look for.
Oh,
Because
perfect.
again, we want the behavior that somebody's watching. Somebody has to feel that somebody else is watching. So we whoever is doing it needs to come forward and say, I looked at it on the 4th of August and this was my result. It's okay. So you get 1 month and then 2 months, and then hopefully that becomes um, a pattern of the business.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else that you measure?
We look at that training score
Okay.
that people get repeatedly. You'd be surprised how many people on an ongoing basis start by getting a high score on the training, and 2 months later, 4 months later, do not get as high a score on the training.
Okay.
Yeah, we found that a lot of people remember for a very short period of time that
Right.
it is important. So you have to keep those training scores very alive.
Okay.
That's one thing we've noted.
So analytics, your dividends, you're
Hmm.
looking at kind of patch management, you look at training,
Hmm.
all great areas to look for. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, we've got all this. Now, how do I scale this? Like, you've got me in a good position. How
Hmm.
do I grow this? Because I mean, maybe I'm at a 20, 30 person like company,
Hmm.
and now you've got all these security controls. How do I look at growing this in each quarter to each year and moving forward?
Hmm. We love in the onboarding process for security to be made a topic of discussion. When new people come into the organization, we want to understand their posture and their attitude toward this whole thing. We want in that scaling process for organizations to continue to allocate responsibility to a person or a group of people. Remember, I started at the start of the conversation by saying we cared about the cybersecurity committee. Well,
Right.
perhaps the leader is no longer leading that committee because he's got bigger things to do, but somebody else who treats it as seriously is now in charge and they can continue to drive it through. We want to see security being part of every plan that's created. You've got a growth plan, you're buying a company, whatever it is you're doing. I want to see the security section of that document. So we believe that true scaling requires participation from a security professional on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Well, perfect.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said, I know we've only got like a couple more minutes left. Any closing thoughts?
My biggest closing thought is causing people to realize on the dividend model that we spoke about, that dividends are a continuous thing. You don't want a stock that pays a dividend now, doesn't pay a dividend for the next 5 years, and then tells you it's going to pay it in 5 years' time. You want to understand the recurring dividend.
Right.
One of the things we're now sharing with people is thinking about AI and its convergence with cyber is a dividend point that you care very heavily about.
Okay.
Your people are using AI, whether you have a policy or not, your people are using it.
Right.
I have not met very many people who are talking about the security of the models they're using. And so we believe that that's a major dividend opportunity. How secure are the models on which your people are relying? So that brings us now back to, well, are you using models? Many employees don't admit it up front. And then, okay, let's talk about this really. You don't use it at all. And then they sheepishly say, okay, well, maybe I use this one every now. Okay, let's talk about that one.
Right.
That's not corporately sanctioned. What did you put up there? And so the conversation has to continue about dividend in my mind.
Yeah. And I think to your point about AI, it's so embedded into so many different software solutions now. Meeting notes, if you're in a Zoom call, it pops up and trying to take your notes, right? It's trying to monitor your calls. It's so embedded into all the technologies from the big conglomerates to smaller solutions. So my recommendation is companies need to start looking at it at least to the point of what is being used, what is being monitored, what data is going into it, and having those tough conversations. I mean, my recommendation is any organization that meets with Robert has that conversation. Like, what do I need to know? And that's a question I would ask Robert right from the start is, what do I need to know? Tell me what I don't know, what I don't know about, right? Things along that line that will really help me understand AI technology and what do I need to protect.
Right.
I think that's the gap because we don't know what we don't know.
We don't. I remember I spoke earlier about the iterative nature of the paid model.
Yeah.
So we now go back to preparation and we say, we've got some security documents. Do you have some AI policies? Is there any connection between those AI policies and your cyber policies? And
Right.
you and I both know it's such an embryonic thing
Yeah.
that most people look at you like, wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Right.
So one has to iteratively do the preparation, the assessment, the implementation, and the dividend thinking in a scaling model.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Robert, this has been an amazing conversation. Now, one of the things I want to add to people, if you guys want to check Robert out or connect with him, you can look at his LinkedIn account, linkedin.com/IN/Robert-Maxwell-TGT. If you guys are watching this, take a screenshot. You can go reach out to Robert. If you guys are listening out, check out the meeting notes. And then if you want to go check out his website, I've got it here, tgtsolutions.com. Check it out. I mean, Robert, thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned so much from you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, I mean, I think you guys, and my takeaway from this, there's just so much to cover. I mean, you look at the paid model that he had, the acronym, how you're looking through that process. And I hope you guys go back and listen to this, watch it, take notes. Because, I mean, that's why we had this conversation, is really to draw out the process, what you need to do. Now, I recommend don't do this on your own. Hire someone like Robert, go through that process with him, just because he's going to know how to make it efficient. He's going to go through the bottlenecks. He's going to go through the challenges that you're potentially going to deal with. Also, he's going to help to streamline things that maybe you need to procurement, different technology that he'd recommend, things that's going to help be more efficient that someone new might not be in this industry will have some bottlenecks, will some heels. They'll start to go out to the industry and meet with 15 different sales guys, and they'll drag out the process. Well, Robert will be able to streamline that for you. Make sure you're being mature, but you're doing it in an efficient way. So I think this was a really good conversation, a lot to learn when it comes to cybersecurity. And this is something you can implement from SMBs to mid to large size organizations. So don't forget, software's hackable, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.